Hernandez. As we go ahead and see that Lorenzo Simpson is a southpaw. Steve, 20 years of age, 6-0, 4 wins coming by way of knockout. High expectations for the young standout out of Baltimore. Trains under the guidance of Calvin Ford, who incidentally happens to be the lead trainer for Gervonta Davis. We saw Gervonta to close out the year just under a month ago down in Atlanta. He defeated Yuriorkis Gamboa here on Showtime.
And what you see, Ray, about Simpson, first of all, he's a southpaw, but watching him on tape, he has a great jab, and you're seeing it now. He's very calm and poised for a 19-year-old. You know, he's fighting guys that he should beat. At this point in his career, you think he might be a little over-anxious to take them out. He's not. He's a very patient fighter. A good puncher, but more of a boxer in terms of mentality.
Well, and for Hernandez, this is the 7th undefeated fighter that he has put his skills up against. And for Lorenzo Simpson, it's going to be interesting to see how he does against someone who's been in there against undefeated fighters, and if he can put him away early. So there is such a thing as style points, especially as a young prospect.
Yeah, and you just saw something very mature by Simpson. He threw a very hard left to the midsection, which is something that young fighters sometimes forget or neglect to do.
Also, Steve, with Lorenzo Simpson is that he has such a large social media following. He has close to 67,000 followers on Instagram, and he says he's very proud of where he's from in the Baltimore area, and Gervonta Davis obviously leading that charge.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's sort of a double-edged sword, because in talking to Malik Hawkins, another young fighter from the Gervonta Davis stable, and also talking to Lorenzo Simpson, they're very appreciative of the opportunities that being associated with Gervonta give them, but they also want to make their own names. They don't want to be forever linked to them or forever linked to their cards where they're always on the, underneath Gervonta. So this is a good chance with this streaming exposure for Lorenzo Simpson to make a name. He's promotionally a free agent, by the way, Ray, and every promoter in boxing, according to his people, have been after him to sign with them, but so far he's kept himself independent.
Well, I mean, look, he has a very good look. He's 6-0, 4 wins coming by way of knockout. We're seeing some good defense, at least as Hernandez threw some punches, and good job by Simpson to evade them. And everything with Simpson comes off the jab.
Yeah, he's tall, not necessarily taller than his opponent tonight, but he's rangy, and he seems to understand distance pretty well because he's using that jab to its ultimate effect.
Final moment to the first round. That concludes the first. Something remarkable with Lorenzo Simpson. He was raised by his mother after his father was murdered. And for him to be able to have somewhat of a normal upbringing after dealing with such a traumatic life experience, I think speaks volumes in terms of the character that the young man is.
I totally agree. There has to be something special about some of these kids, and boxing gives them the opportunity to escape the streets, to find a haven in boxing, to have reason in their life, to have discipline, and stay in condition and do the things that are healthy as opposed to self-defeating. And I think Simpson is a prime example of that, such a young fighter, but he certainly seems on the right track. And again, Gervonta Davis has to realize that he's a role model for these younger fighters, even though he's pretty young himself.
Yeah, no question. Well, Lorenzo Simpson also, Steve, he went ahead and he stated that he wants to contend and be in line for some type of title towards the end of 2020. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. And he wants to be busy here in 2020.
Yeah, he should be fighting very often. And his opponent here, Antonio Hernandez, does not look like a fighter with as bad a record as he has. He throws straight punches. He seems to take a pretty decent shot.
We're at the midway mark of the second. Steve, as you look at guys that, you look at the record, you see a veteran of 14 fights, and you're thinking, well, he doesn't have the best record per se. He doesn't even have a 500 record, but the record is deceiving because he does do things that are, he does things that are good in some aspects, does Antonio Hernandez.
Yeah, if you just saw him, if you saw Hernandez for the first time, you'd never guess his record is what it is. But you know what? In 13 fights, he's faced only 3 fighters who had a loss. Every other fighter was undefeated. Granted, it was only 2-0, 3-0, 4-0. But there's a reason fighters are undefeated, and he's just been matched very tough. He said to me yesterday, I could easily be 13-0. Now, that might be stretching it.
Yeah, true.
but nonetheless, it gives you an idea of where his mindset is.
Good straight left by Lorenzo Simpson. It's one of those philosophies that is you look at the NFL, a team can give you a hard time for a half, and then the better team pulls away late third quarter, early fourth quarter, and I think that could be said about the kind of opposition that Antonio Hernandez faces.
And that's a great analogy to this fight, because in the early going here, Simpson is investing in the body, which is the equivalent of a football team running the football, wearing you down for the fourth quarter. And I think Simpson is doing exactly that. You see Hernandez reacting negatively to the body shots. And in another round or two, it's only a 6-round fight, of course, but in another round or two, maybe those body punches will totally deflate him. We'll see.
And that's the end of the second. Staying in the pocket, staying out of danger is Lorenzo Simpson.
Yeah, he's fighting this fight at the range that he wants to. And Hernandez's style is forcing Simpson to be aggressive and come forward. He's not doing it all the time, but if he wants to make the fight, he's the one that has to come forward.
Well, 5 victories for Lorenzo Simpson in 2019. Looking to start off a busy 2020, and you hear Calvin Ford, who is telling Lorenzo Simpson step to him. He wants him to be a little bit more aggressive and put the foot on the gas.
Watch the way. There's a big left hand.
Straight left that connected for Simpson. And a left to the body by Simpson.
Simpson's keeping Hernandez is keeping his right glove up. He brings it down, he brings it up. There you see, when he thinks Simpson's going to punch, he brings it high. Simpson should drill a right hook to the body. It's there all day.
There's a straight left right on the chin of Hernandez. Lorenzo Simpson won many national titles as an amateur, had quite a bit of buzz about him, and even still as a young professional. And Steve, it's great to be able to see a right hook that connected for Simpson, the development of a young fighter, because to have this platform and to see a fighter when they haven't even cracked double digits, I think is very important for them. As we see with Lorenzo Simpson jabbing, a straight right by Hernandez. Right hook to the body.
I think what Simpson needs to do here is step forward a little bit more. That will give him the range to land some shots to the body where he's been most effective.
There's a big right hook upstairs, caught Hernandez, and he didn't like that too much as Simpson comes forward. Now shots to the body. Can Simpson now start to take over as Hernandez is retreating?
And once again, Ray, not to make the same point again and again, but isn't Hernandez giving us a lot more resistance than we would think from a fighter who's 2-10-1? I mean, it's remarkable. He's hanging in there, and he's fighting back.
He is, as we like to say, a cagey veteran as we're is starting to take over.
Well, Simpson's won every round so far, and I anticipate he will continue to do so.
And going back as we are just over a week away from the Super Bowl, but it's like, all right, now let's blow these guys out by 14 to 17 and warm up the bus and let's go home. I think that's what Lorenzo Simpson might be thinking because his skills are clearly far superior than Hernandez.
Exactly right, and I think that the length of this fight will be determined by how much Simpson's able to get to the body. But it might be time to continue the football analogy, a little play action pass here and go see if it's time.
Time to, with the backbreaker.
Exactly.
The Patrick Mahomes to Tyreek Hill. You know?
Sounds like a man who likes to cheat.
Well, hey, you know.
Just saying.
Maybe a few pennies will be put on that one, but that's neither here nor there. But we're here at Barclays Center. Don't forget later tonight, Danny Garcia, Ivan Redkach, a division that is absolutely stacked in boxing, Steve, the welterweight division, obviously the glamour division in boxing, and Danny Garcia front and center here tonight on Showtime.
Well, we've seen Danny here at Barclays so many times. This will be his 8th time, and He scored some sensational knockouts in his career. He's a big puncher when he can land. He's not always the busiest fighter. And Redcatch is going to be very aggressive. Ivan Redcatch, one of the more exciting pure fighters. He's been on Showtime a couple of times on the Showbox series. He lost to Tevin Farmer on Showtime Extreme. He's been very exciting, and for that reason, it's one of those classic fights of which you say it's going to be very exciting as long as it lasts.
That's very true. And again, last week we saw an upset with Jason Rosario against Julian Williams. Now, I'm not saying that Ivan Redcatch is Jason Rosario, but you can never count out a prize fighter, and that's what makes this so compelling tonight.
Especially a puncher. Redcatch is a pretty good puncher. We'll see how he does at welterweight. It'll be only his second fight ever at welterweight, so he's moving up. Danny Garcia, of course, was also a smaller fighter once also. He was at 140 for a few years, won a world title, or 2 world titles at that weight. So it's an interesting matchup because you know Redcatch is going to be aggressive. He can't be anything else. And Danny Garcia might try to box a little bit more than we're used to seeing him do in this fight because of whom he's fighting.
And it's one of those things that, from a name standpoint, Danny Garcia has fought the likes of the Keith Thurmans of the world, the Sean Porters, which you've seen here on Showtime. Is he going to be able to mentally gear up for Ivan Redcatch?
I've never seen any reason to think that Danny Garcia takes any fights for granted. He's had tune-ups along the way, Rod Salka here, other fighters. The only fight... Granados, right, who he blew out. I mean, he stopped Granados. I think the only fighter ever to stop Granados.
Yes.
So Danny Garcia is pretty grounded and pretty focused, I believe. And I don't think he's going to take Redcatch lightly at all.
Oh, and Lorenzo Simpson isn't taking
some adversity at some point in their careers, preferably not too early. You don't want to have to show that you can handle adversity after 5 fights or anything like that. But that's ultimately what you're looking for in prospects. And it's so much fun, Ray, to watch prospects. We've both seen so many of them, calling fights ringside. Which ones make it? Which ones don't make it? Why do you like one guy? Why do you think maybe the other guy won't go all the way? It's very interesting to see, and you have to see fighters multiple times to make that determination.
When some guys look like $1 million on one night, and then the following night you start to get behind him, you're like, whoa, wait a minute, he looked very normal and sort of like a human being and not this world beater. So that's what we love seeing, this maturation process with these young prospects. We see that the talent in boxing, in my opinion, continues to get better.
Yeah, and I think for a guy like Simpson, who's only had 6 fights, this is very good matchmaking. He's very young. You know he's going to have some soft fights. While he's controlling this fight, I wouldn't call this a soft fight. He's facing resistance. He's facing a guy that's punching at him. Granted, he can't hurt him, but he's punching at him. So it's really good matchmaking, I believe. And that's another example of what you and I know, which is records. Sometimes you throw them out. They don't mean anything. 2-10-1 for this guy. He's better than that.
And Hernandez throwing some combinations, but back comes Lorenzo Simpson and Eddie Claudio. I believe warning about shots below the belt. But back comes Hernandez. Nice right uppercut by Hernandez.
And after watching those 2 shots, Ray, I think it's fortunate to Simpson that Hernandez isn't a big puncher.
At this point, Steve, I'm surprised at Calvin Ford. There's a big right cross. They are wailing away upon each other. What a way to begin the boxing calendar here as they're slugging it out in the center of the ring.
It's a little alarming with Simpson getting hit so flush all of a sudden in this fight.
It has to be, in my opinion, Steve, overconfidence. Don't you agree?
Well, I do think that he'd be a little more defensively careful if he thought his opponent could hurt him. But he's clearly tasted Hernandez's best shots. And when he's taking these shots flush, he's walking right through them. But that still doesn't mean he should be taking those shots.
No, very true. Simpson, though, in total control, and he gets clobbered with the left going backwards. And dare I even say that maybe Hernandez might be winning this round?
I think you definitely can say that. Sure.
It is still Lorenzo Simpson who is in control from the Baltimore area, training under Calvin Ford. I know Gervonta Davis has got his eye on this one, a stablemate of his. But again, let's remind ourselves, Lorenzo Simpson isn't even 21 years of age yet. He's 19, so there's still growth to be made in the young fighter's progression. That's the end of 5. 1 more to go. And trying to pound away upon Simpson, but back comes the 19-year-old from Baltimore.
And Simpson looks like he's in intent upon making this an in-fight, keeping his gloves up.
There's a right hook to the body. Oh, big right hook that connected upstairs for Simpson. You know what Simpson's style reminds me of, Steve? It is the guy that's in our co-main event, Jared Hurd. Hurd likes to swarm you, pound away upon you, his pressure to suffocate you, and that's what Simpson's trying to do right now against Hernandez.
Yeah, a fighter with decent range like Simpson.
Big straight left, check in the jaw of Hernandez, followed by a right hook.
Well, I talked about what adjustment Simpson would make. His adjustment is he's going to walk in and try to end this fight with power shots.
He's coming in, bombs away. Is one Lorenzo Simpson. It's almost like he's behind on the scorecards heading into the 6th round.
Great point. He's fighting like a guy who needs this round. And he doesn't. He's definitely ahead on points.
When talking about, Jared Hurd, remember when Jared Hurd, a couple of years ago, back in 2018, when he was fighting Edison Lara, and he got the knockdown in the 12th round to narrowly give him that victory.
That was the fight of the year for 2018.
Jared Hurd in action tonight against Francisco Santana. That's our co-main event. Showtime Championship Boxing coming your way in an hour and 22 minutes. If you don't have Showtime, go to Showtime.com to start your free trial now.
Now, obviously, Lorenzo Simpson is not anywhere near Jared Hurd's level. But Jared Hurd tonight, with a new trainer, says he wants to try to use the jab more, take advantage of his range more. That's something Simpson, as a 19-year-old, seems to already understand that the jab is important. Now, he's not using it this round, right?
No.
You can see it's a phone booth war, but he does have an excellent jab. And we saw it early in the fight, not so much later in the fight.
Good right hook to the body, but give credit to his opponent tonight, Antonio Hernandez, who is no doubt not going away despite the fact that he has eaten an avalanche of punishment.
Always a valuable lesson for a young fighter to learn. Not everybody goes. You can't take everybody out. This could be, looks like it's going to be the second consecutive distance fight for Simpson.
A right hook that connected for Simpson, but Hernandez throwing nonetheless. Final moments of the 6th and final round. Lorenzo Simpson trying to elevate his record to 7-0 tonight. A showcase opportunity for him. He's looked impressive, but Hernandez has offered plenty of resistance here this evening. And that is the end of the fight. Steve, what was your impression of the young 19-year-old from Baltimore?
He did some things really well. He pounded the body when he had the opportunity. Early in the fight, he used his jab. I'd like to see him that more. A good learning fight. That's the most important thing for a 19-year-old fighter. He went the distance. He had to adjust. He fought a very strong 6th round. So I'd say I'm impressed, but there's clearly work to be done.
When people look at a young fighter, how they are doing with these kind of fights, and they either overanalyze or they sort of poo-poo the performance, my reaction is relax.
Yeah.
The kid has skills and he's undefeated still.
Well, he was the #1 rated amateur at his weight in the United States a short time ago, so clearly he has skills. And one thing I like about him, as I watch this replay, I'm reminded of it. For a southpaw, he has a good right hook. A lot of southpaws are one-handed fighters. When it comes to power, he uses his right hook, which is a good thing to see for a young fighter.
And it's also, he uses, especially in the early going of a fight, his jab. The jab is so fundamental for Lorenzo Simpson, and the body attack, which you pointed out earlier in the fight.
Yeah, those two things are invaluable, because if the fight's out of range, you need the jab. If the fight's in close, you need the body punching. He seems to have both of them.
It's good to have a young fighter deal with these kind of distant fights, because not only physically, but also mentally, can I go 6 rounds? What do I do when a guy isn't going away after I unload plenty of punishment his way? So that is what is going on in the mind of Lorenzo Simpson. We'll send it up to ring announcer. Here is Miguel Flores.
Ladies and gentlemen, after 6 rounds of action, we go to the judges' scorecards. All 3 judges were in agreement, 59-55 for your winner by unanimous decision. And still undefeated,